Shalom, shalom to all my fellow brothers and sisters out there. It's me again, Damian Powell from YeshuaSavesAll.com. Peace be to you in the name of our Father, Yahweh, and our Master, the Son of Yahweh, Yeshua HaMashiach. So today, my fellow brothers and sisters, we'll be talking about High-Shabbat, the first day of the first month. So I wanted to go ahead and get this message out there so that everybody can include this day on their calendars. And we'll go ahead and go through the information. So the beginning of the year on Yahweh's calendar begins in the spring, Aviv, right? When things like flowers and trees are coming back to life as they begin to bloom again. Makes perfect sense, right? And it begins to warm up outside. But the new year does not occur in the fall as Judaism falsely claims on their civil calendar, which they call Rosh Hashanah or Rosh Hashanah. And this is one of the things that I talked about, and I always talk about during Yom Teruah. Okay, that's the true name is Yom Teruah, but they call it Rosh Hashanah because it says the head of the year. It can't be the beginning of the year because our Father Yahweh tells us when the beginning of the year is. Okay, so they call it Rosh Hashanah or Rosh Hashanah when things are beginning to die and it's getting cold outside. Okay, so this year on the Zadok priestly calendar, okay, the first day of the first month will be on March the 22nd. That's the first day of the first month. Okay, and this day is important because we'll see that it's a high Shabbat, it's a day of remembrance, a feast day, and the beginning of the spring season. Okay, so firstly, let's go to Exodus, Shemoth, chapter 12, verse 1. And Yahweh spoke to Moses, and Aharon, Aaron, in the land of Mitzrayim, Egypt, saying, this month is the beginning of months for you. It is the first month of the year for you. Okay, so we know that on the in the same month is when Passover, when we do Passover. So this is the month of Aviv. So like I said, again, it can't be the fall. All right. So this is the beginning of the months for you. It is the first month of the year for you. Okay, now we know that we ought to blow the shofar at the beginning of every month. Therefore, blowing the shofar would be included as a part of our observance on the first day of the first month, as we see in Numbers chapter 10, verse 10. And in the day of your gladness and in your appointed times and at the beginning of your months, you shall blow the trumpets over your ascending offerings and over your the slaughterings of your peace offerings, and they shall be a remembrance for you before Elohim. I am Yahweh your Elohim. Psalms, Tehillim, chapter 81, verse 3. Blow a shofar in the new month and in the covering for the day of our festival. Okay, so the first day of the first month is the start of the spring season, so we ought to blow the shofar, have a feast, and do no work because it is a high Shabbat, as it is recorded in the temple scroll, which was a part of the found in the Dead Sea Scrolls in cave number 11. And this is the one that I read from right here, the temple scroll. And it was an important work, an important scroll that was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it's talked about in the meaning of the Dead Sea Scrolls that I also read from, but it was found in cave number 11. And this is what the temple scroll says in page 287 through 289, column 14, 9 through 11. It says, and on the first day of the first month, the first of the months, which is the beginning of the months of the year, any laborious work you shall not do, except for what is to be eaten by each person. This only you may prepare for yourselves. Again, and on the first day of the first month, the first of the months, which is the beginning of the months of the year, Any laborious work you shall not do except for what is to be eaten by each person. This only you may prepare for yourselves. So now keep that in mind, because this is the same directive that our Father Yahweh gives us during the Feast of Unleavened Bread, where he says that we can cook on the first and on the seventh day of Feast of Unleavened Bread because they are high Shabbats. But we cannot work on those days because they are high Shabbats. Okay? And as you can see, the same language is being applied here for the first day of the first month, what we just read from the Temple Scroll. Okay? So let's read Exodus chapter 12, verse 5 through 16. I'm going to read it from the Samaritan Torah. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, but on the first day, which is a high Shabbat, you shall remove the leaven from your houses. For whoever eats anything leavened from the first day until the seventh day, and that soul shall be cut off from Yisrael. And on the first day, high Shabbat, you shall have a set apart reading, and a set apart reading on the seventh day, high Shabbat. No work at all shall be done on them, except what must be eaten by every soul. That alone may be prepared for you. So, the Samaritan Torah is a part of the ancient text. The Temple Scroll is a part of the ancient text, and we see that they agree. Okay, just making that comparison there. And matter of fact, it reads the same way in all texts as far as no work on the first day and the seventh day, because the high Shabbats on the Feast of Unleavened Bread. But he says that you may prepare food for yourselves. That is all you may do, but do no work on those days. Just as is written concerning the first day of the first month in the Temple Scroll. Okay, now it makes sense because we can prepare food because it's a feast day, okay, and it matches the following scriptures that I'm about to read. So let's go to Jubilees chapter 6, verse 23 through 28. All right, Jubilees chapter 6, verse 23 through 28. And on the first of the first month, which is spring, the start of spring season, on the first of the fourth month, summer, and on the first of the seventh month, fall, and on the first of the 10th month, winter, are days of remembrance, and the days of the seasons in the 4 divisions of the year. These are written and ordained as a testimony forever. And Noah ordained them for himself as feasts for the generations forever, so that they have become thereby a memorial unto him. And on the first of the first month, he was bidden to make for himself an ark. And on that day, the earth became dry. And he opened the ark and saw the earth. And on the first of the fourth month, the mouths of the depths of the abyss beneath were closed. And on the first of the seventh month, all the mouths of the abysses of the earth were open, and the waters began to descend into them. And on the first of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains were seen, and Noah was glad. And on this account he ordained them for himself as feasts for a memorial forever, and thus they are ordained. And thus they are ordained. Now, let's look at Jubilees chapter 7, verse 2 through 3. Jubilees chapter 7, verse 2 through 3. And in the 7th week, in the first year, in this Jubilee, Noah planted vines on the mountain on which the ark rested, named Luvar, one of the mountains of Ararat. And they produced fruit in the 4th year. And he made wine from them and put it into a vessel and kept it until the 5th year, until the first day on the first of the first month, he celebrated with joy the day of this feast. which matches what we just read in Jubilee 6:23. Okay, and he celebrated with joy the day of this feast. And he made a burnt sacrifice unto Yahweh, 1 young ox, 1 ram, and 7 sheep, each a year old, a kid of the goats, that he might make atonement thereby for himself and his sons. Okay, now let's go to the Genesis Apocryphon. This was also found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, cave number 1, the Genesis Apocryphon. Now, some of it is fragmented, but there's a lot of clear parts that we can actually read in there, which is beautiful. So the Genesis Apocryphon, column 12, verse 13 through 15 says, "And I, Noah, with all of my sons, began to cultivate the earth. I planted a large vineyard on Mount Luvar, and in the 4th year it produced much wine for me. And I brought down all the wine when the first feast came. And on the first day of the first month, which is in the first month of my vineyard, I opened the vessel and began to drink from it on the first day of the 5th year." So as you see, it's the same thing. He's saying the first feast, like I said, it's a feast day, and on the first day of the first month, which is the first of the month. Hallelujah. So let's go on some more here. We currently don't know exactly how the feast was celebrated, if there was a certain tradition within it, but we can clearly see that it was a feast day, okay, as recorded in Jubilees and Genesis Apocryphon, and it was a High-Shabbat according to the Temple Scroll. So outside of the obvious of doing no work, I would suggest cooking some good food on the grill, or eating just a good meal in general. It doesn't have to be on the grill. Just have a good meal, for a feast. Remembering the events of the flood account by reading Genesis and Jubilees for the remembrance portion, and recognizing that it is a new season, the spring season, and blowing the shofar. Okay, so some other witnesses here. I and others strongly believe that the first day of the first month, when Saul was having a feast and David was going to go to, okay, which would show that they were familiar with the Zadok priestly calendar. However, it's not clear as to why Saul had a 3-day feast. So I'll explain more why I believe this in a minute. But 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 5. "And David said to Jonathan, see, tomorrow is the Chodesh, the new month, and I ought to be dining with the king. But let me go, and I shall hide in the field until the 3rd day." So keep that in mind. Until the 3rd day. So it is beginning of the new month, which I believe was the first day of the first month, Chodesh, okay? And then he says that he would hide in the field until the 3rd day at evening, okay? So let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 18. "Jonathan said to him, tomorrow is Chodesh, new month, and you will be missed because your seat will be empty." So we see that there was a feast going on here. 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 24. "And David hid in the field, and when the Chodesh, the new month, came, the sovereign sat down by the food to eat." So again, there is strong reason to believe that it's the first day of the first month, because on the Zadok priestly calendar, the first day of the first month always falls on a WEDNESDAY, okay? The 4th day of the week. So we see that in 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 5, we read that David said that he would hide for 3 days. And 3 days from WEDNESDAY would be the 7th day Shabbat, because we have WED, night, THUR, night, FRI, night, Shabbat, just as it is on the Zadok priestly calendar. And the only reason why David could not participate in this meal is because Saul intended to do harm to David and was warned by Jonathan to flee. Okay, so David was very familiar with the 364-day solar calendar because he wrote a song for each day of the year. Okay, according to the book, The Meaning of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the solar calendar, which is found in Enoch and Jubilees, predates the Qumran community. Okay, and thus proving its ancient origin. So nobody can say that the Qumran community invented the calendar, okay, because it predates them, okay, which is the part of the Zadok priests. They would be familiar with that, which we believe that the Qumran community was Zadokite priests. Okay, so they would be familiar with that. Now, thus it proves its ancient origin. Okay, and there is a description of the contents of the Great Psalms scroll, which was found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay, and this is what it says: the Great Psalms scroll, according to Wikipedia and another article, says the 364 songs for the daily sacrifice and other items, 52 Shabbat songs, 30 songs for monthly offerings and festivals, showed that this psalter was arranged in accordance with the year, weeks, and months of the 364-day solar calendar. Thus, David is associated with the calendar evident in the books of 1st Enoch and Jubilees, and used by the Yahad Essenes at Qumran and elsewhere. So again, this just further proves that David was already familiar with the solar 364-day calendar, as he wrote a song for each day of the year. And I believe it's a match to what we read in 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 5, that he knew that the next day was Chodesh, the beginning of the month, and what we believe is the first day of the first month, because a feast was being held. Now, let's look at David's compositions. 11Q PSA, column 27, 1 through 11. So that would be the 11th cave in Qumran that was found, right? So column 27, 1 through 11. Now David, this is a quote, now David, son of Jesse, was wise, and he shined like the light of the sun. And he was a scribe and discerning and blameless in all his ways before Elohim and humankind. Yahweh gave him a discerning and shining spirit, so that he wrote, and then here are the bullet points, so that he wrote Psalms 3,600, songs to sing before the altar over the daily perpetual offering for all the days of the year, 364. That's important because remember, on the Zadok priestly calendar, we have a base year of 360 days, and then we have one intercalary day added at the end of each season for a total of 364. So that's important to note. That's why he wrote 364 songs for the days of the year. For the Shabbat offerings, 52 songs. For the new month offerings, all the festival days and the Day of Atonement, 30 songs. The total for all the songs that he composed was 446. Also songs for the making of music over people afflicted with demons. And the sum total, psalms and songs, was 4,050. All these he composed through prophecy, which was given to him by the Most High. And if I remember, in Acts chapter 30, I believe, if I have it correct, Acts chapter 30 states that David was a prophet. So, truly beautiful, truly beautiful. Now, let's look at other events on the first day of the first month. Jubilees chapter 28 verse 14. Jubilees 28:14. And again Jacob went into Leah, and she conceived and bare him a third son. And he called his name Levi. On the first day of the first month and the 6th year of this week. So Levi, who the Levitical priesthood came through, was born on the first day of the first month. Which is beautiful because though Yeshua doesn't come from the tribe of Levi, he comes from the tribe of Judah and the order of Melchizedek. He is our high priest. Exodus chapter 40 verse 1 through 2 in the Samaritan Torah reads, And Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, On the first day of the first month, you shall set up the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, and you shall put in it the ark of the testimony, and partition off the ark with the mercy seat. And you shall bring in the table and arrange the things that are to be set in order on it. And you shall bring in the menorah and light the candles. And you shall also set the altar of gold for the incense before the ark of the testimony, and put up the screen for the gate of the tabernacle. And you shall set the altar of the burnt offering before the gate of the tabernacle, the tent of meeting. And you shall set the laver between the tabernacle of meeting and the altar, and put water therein. And you shall set up the courtyard all around, and hang up the screen at the court gate. Then we have Exodus chapter 40 verse 17. And it came to pass in the first month and the 2nd year since their exodus from Egypt, on the first day of the month, the tabernacle was raised. So we know that animal sacrifices were required on the first day of the first month, according to the temple scroll. So this was the start of them being able to do so now that the tabernacle was set up for the first time in the wilderness. Again, temple scroll, page 287 through 289, column 14, 9 through 13. And on the first day of the first month, the first of the months, which is the beginning of the months of the year, any laborious work you shall not do, except for what is to be eaten by each person. This only you may prepare for yourselves. And you shall make a burnt offering to Yahweh, 1 male calf, 1 ram, 7 yearling lambs, unblemished, 1 goat for the purification offering, besides the monthly burnt offering. So the tabernacle was set up in the beginning of the new year, the first day of the first month, which makes me think when Yeshua comes to reign on this earth, that it will be the beginning of new years of righteous rule from the righteous king, the son of Yahweh, with him reigning for 1,000 years in the temple. Hallelujah. So I pray that this message helps you as we return to the ancient paths of worship. And as always, my Father Yahweh Barak bless you in Yeshua Mashiach's name. Shalom.